when the boundaries of fate are breached, new worlds are born.
In March 2020, FF7 Remake presented us with a handful of unexpected mysteries to ponder over the years leading to its successor. The party defeated an ethereal being known as the Harbinger of Fate, which led to the bounds of destiny being broken.
What will we find on the other side?
Freedom. Boundless, terrifying freedom. Like a great, never-ending sky.
We were then shown a scene of Zack, who fans know to be deceased, surviving his fatal encounter. In this scene, the Shinra Beagle mascot known as Samp was instead represented by a terrier, implying that either time had been rewritten, or that this was a glimpse into an alternate timeline, universe, or world. 4 years later, FF7 Rebirth confirmed that this was indeed some sort of alternate reality. Rebirth also showed us other alternate worlds, such as one where Aerith and Cloud go on one last date, and one where Cloud successfully saves Aerith from Sephiroth's attempted impaling. While first playing through the story, many of us were interpreting these events through the lens of multiverses and timelines that we'd internalized over the previous 4 years of speculation. This made it challenging to interpret the many new clues presented in Rebirth without bias. But once we had some time to ponder, many of us slowly came to the realization that the alternate worlds explored may be less science fiction and more spiritual. We began to notice all the moments in which the writers directed our attention to connections between these worlds and the lifestream. One example is when Aerith touches the lifestream under Cosmo Canyon and seemingly glimpses the world where Zack is alive. Then we have the scene where Aerith takes Cloud into an alternate world filled with joy, which she describes as her dream.
We could call it a homecoming. Or homeward bound, maybe? Let's just call it a dream. My dream, to be precise.
And perhaps most directly, an NPC in Cosmo Canyon tells us that she believes in a spiritual post-death experience made up of a combination of real memories and memories of dreams.
So what if spiritual energy doesn't distinguish between our real, lived memories and the unrealized desires buried deep in our hearts?
Later on, Sephiroth tells Cloud that the planet encompasses a multitude of worlds. The planet's soul is the lifestream, and therefore the lifestream encompasses a multitude of worlds. Combine all these clues together, and it becomes glaringly obvious that no matter how rich, lifelike, and tangible these worlds may be, they still exist within a spiritual plane inside the lifestream. Maybe inside each of these worlds exists an entire universe made of dreams and memories, but it seems more likely that their makeup is closer to how actual memories function, fragmented, inaccurate, and tied to the perspectives of individuals, possibly even taking place after their deaths, much like ideas played around with in the final season of the TV show Lost. Zack and Biggs discuss being whisked away to their world during a moment they thought they were going to die, and how their internal clocks seem to be broken. It's as if someone, whether themselves or someone else, created this world based on their dreams and memories as a way to embrace escapism instead of accepting their fates. But even if none of this ends up being accurate and these worlds end up being indistinguishable from reality, that doesn't mean they're as quote-unquote real as the top layer of life that exists on the planet. It could maybe even be argued that if they're indistinguishable from reality, maybe that spiritual existence is as valuable as the real world, but we'll have to wait and see how they're portrayed in Part 3 to know if that's a valid perspective. Kazushige Nojima, the lead writer of the trilogy, has also been quoted as saying that he researched psychologist Carl Jung and his theory of the collective unconscious when writing the story, and that these ideas contain clues to how the story will end. The collective unconscious has to do with life forms sharing a connected, almost spiritual memory that can influence reality. There are many ways to interpret this, and I'm certainly not knowledgeable enough to talk about these topics, but this is yet another direct nudge from the creators toward interpreting the story as much more spiritual than we have been. Now, if you want to use the word multiverse to describe a bunch of spiritual worlds that exist within one prime reality, you are free to do so, but I don't personally see the point. For one, that's just not the definition of the term. But more importantly, we're all sick to death of multiverse stories, and it's the reason a lot of people jumped ship at the end of Remake. Of course, it is possible that the Beagle world is just another livestream world, but then we're dealing with livestreams within livestreams, and I personally feel like that gets a little convoluted, but we'll have to wait and see. Regardless of all these details, when you interpret Rebirth's narrative the way I have, the writers have given us an easy exit ramp that dodges the sci-fi baggage of multiverse stories and exchanges it for something something deeply spiritual that, I think, connects far more directly to Cloud's personal journey in the original game than most people are expecting.
Must have been some dream you were having, judging by the way your eyes were twitching.
Don't know if I'd call it a dream.
When we take Rebirth's revelations into consideration, it recontextualizes Remake's ending. Although defeating the Harbinger of Fate did stop the Whispers from ensuring the canonical events of OG FF7 always played out the same, the end result was likely not a spiderweb of alternate realities identical to the real world, but rather a spiderweb of infinite possibilities within the context of wishes, dreams, and memories, all within the lifestream. One theory I've heard discussed a lot, especially by friend of the channel Schrodinger's Baby Seal, is that the Whispers are essentially Cetra or Cetra-created beings whose purpose is identical to that of the Cetra, to protect the planet from those who would harm it. Extrapolating on this, I wonder if the Whispers and their Harbinger overlord enacted this purpose by limiting the infinite potential of lifestream dreams to one canonical series of events. And whenever reality strayed from that vision, they would replace reality's events with those of the lifestream dreams. Once the Harbinger was defeated, the Whispers lost their directive, and Sephiroth was able to take on the role of their leader. Now that he controls the Whispers, he can use them to pluck whatever nightmares he wants from the lifestream and override their real-world counterparts, or as Sephiroth calls it, merging worlds. I actually don't think these seemingly brazen additions to the original story are nearly as new as we've been assuming. In fact, I feel very strongly that we've actually seen at least one of these lifestream dream worlds in the original FF7. When we think about what these dream worlds have in common, one idea stands out. Many, if not all, of the worlds we're shown are from the perspective of someone who is, in a way, living out their unrealized dreams. The thematic connection is wishful thinking.
If only we all had more time, am I right?
Aerith gets to go on one last date with Cloud, Zack survives his fatal encounter, Cloud saves Aerith from Sephiroth. And in the original FF7 and presumably Remake Part 3, Cloud and Tifa visit Cloud's lifestream dream where he became a first-class soldier. And in the background of that sequence, we even see giant floating materia, which very well may be other worlds made of a combination of memories and dreams, just like the Cosmo Canyon NPC told us about. It may end up being the case that the concept of lifestream dream worlds influencing reality was there all along, and these supposedly multiversal additions are simply an elaboration on FF7's most important sequence. And that, just like in the original lifestream sequence, saying goodbye to these dreams of optimism and escapism and accepting the hardships of reality may be what's best for Cloud, his friends, and the player.